Please note, the audio for this video was made with the help of an AI service offered by IBM. Please take help of the captions in case you miss out or face difficulties in understanding. Welcome back. In this online lesson, we will discuss a poem by William Wordsworth titled The Old Cumberland Beggar. Before we get to the poem, let us learn a bit about the poet. Towards the latter part of this lesson, we will discuss some important points you must keep in mind while preparing from an exam point of view. So, William Wordsworth was born on April 7, 1770 in Cockermouth, a small town near the northwest coast of England, in the Lake District, one of England's most literary regions, having also been home to Robert Southey, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, John Ruskin, and Beatrix Potter. The Lake District famously is also the setting of much of Wordsworth's poetry. Wordsworth's works epitomizes Romanticism. William Hazlitt once wrote, quote, "Mr. Wordsworth's genius is a pure emanation of the spirit of the age," end quote. For a time, what we now call the Romantic period was known as the Age of Wordsworth. He lived longer than any of the other five major Romantics: Blake, Coleridge, Byron, Shelley and Keats, three of whom are famous for having died young. Born in the same year as Beethoven, Wordsworth, in contrast to the other Romantics, lived to be 80. By then he had become a fixture of Victorian literature, serving for the last 7 years of his life as the Queen's Poet Laureate. He was succeeded in that position upon his death in 1850 by Tennyson, whose In Memoriam AHH appeared in the same year. The span of Wordsworth's life is remarkable for its longevity and for his productivity, but also for the major upheavals in politics, society, and aesthetics that took place during it. Most notably the American War for Independence, the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars, the ongoing Enlightenment, the rise of the working class and the Industrial Revolution, the expansion of reading audiences, and the growth of publishing, and the literary and artistic moment or movement that we now call Romanticism. Now, let us move to the poem. The Old Cumberland Beggar. The poem was written in 1798 and was published in the year 1800 in the second edition of the Lyrical Ballads. Wordsworth prefixed the poem with a note that said, quote, "The class of beggars to which the old man here described belongs will probably soon be extinct." It consisted of poor and, mostly, old and infirm persons who confined themselves to a stated round in their neighborhood and had certain fixed days on which, at different houses, they regularly received alms, sometimes of money, but mostly in provisions, end quote. Interestingly, Charles Lamb dismissed this particular poem by calling it a lecture for putting forward a dubious moral proposition. We will soon understand what made Lamb say that. Anyway, let us quickly go through the poem. So, the speaker sees the old Cumberland beggar while he is on a walk. The beggar is perched on a low structure of rude masonry, built at the foot of a huge hill, that is, near a human construct and a natural entity. This combination of landmarks gives us the beggar's exact coordinates, providing the reader with a kind of grid of information. The speaker then carefully emphasizes the order and disorder within the scene by contrasting items whose shape and number are easily measured with those whose existence is more chaotic. The beggar sits upon the second step of the masonry, with his staff laid across the broad smooth stone that overlays the pile on the heap. His food is an assortment of shapeless scraps and fragments, and, although he scans the food with a fixed and serious look, his mind is only engaged in idle computation. Wordsworth then begins to detail the beggar's meal, his location, and his pattern of perambulation. The beggar sits in solitude and food crumbs fall in little showers from his shaking hand. The small birds standing within the length of half his staff await their share. Having consumed his meager rations, he proceeds on his walk. Following that, the speaker tells the readers about how the horseman lodges a coin firmly within the old man's hat, the girl lifts the tollgate for him, and the postboy's carriage makes way for him. But the beggar does not change his course, moving slowly, his eyes fixed on the ground, noticing nothing and disturbing nothing. The villagers' behavior indicate that they grant him a special status and, in making their decision to help him, defer to his needs, such as his hunger, frailty, and poor eyesight, but it also suggests the beggar's exclusion from social and communal spatial practices. One can also say that his non-participation in the regular spatial practices too locates the beggar outside of the community. However, the speaker warns us, but deem not this man useless, statesman. And not to think that he is of no importance, for even the meanest of created things, or forms created the most vile and brute, are significant. The rhetoric of walking and the discourse of officialdom come together. As the beggar creeps along, he becomes a record. Not only is the beggar, on his circumscribed walk, a record of charitable acts, he is reduced to those records. The wandering beggar is firmly embedded within the discourses of the age when the evolving network of statistics, demography, and classification was full of debates about human freedom. The beggar takes his rounds and the people offer alms because habit does the work of reason. Both begging and almsgiving are acts performed within a larger regiment of conditioned behavior. Added to that, the system of numbers, account books, and laws, over which the beggar has no control and in which he does not consciously participate, maps the beggar's movements. For the numerous villagers who live sheltered and flourish in a little grove of their own kindred, the solitary beggar poses no threat. The villagers behold in him a silent monitor. In turn, the beggar, as a register of the villagers' offices, monitors their kindnesses and humanitarian actions. The poem concludes with Wordsworth praying may never house, misnamed of industry, make him a captive. Yet, ironically, he has never been free outside of either. The villagers offer alms to the beggar because he is not a vagabond. Wordsworth's poem celebrates order, predictability, and certainty, while not really admiring the beggar's freedom. The beggar remains firmly embedded within the system that sought to impose order on vagrancy and unruliness. The domain of numbers, laws, and demographic accounts. It is significant that the beggar is an old man. Poverty in old age is a function of lower economic and social status prior to aging. The economic dependency of old people is not the result of age, rather, because a worker's occupation determines his or her income, social security benefits, savings for retirement, pension, and health care options. Various social situations and policies could be said to combine to create poverty, in that they determine whether a worker is more or less dependent later in life. Wordsworth's prayer that the old man, even if infirm, may be allowed to continue begging perversely proposes that the conditions which created poverty prior to his aging may be retained. Wordsworth may have been motivated by the best intentions, as many scholars have pointed out, but nevertheless the poem displays insensitivity in treating the beggar as an instrument. Now, I hope you understand what made Charles Lamb so critical of the poem. While preparing from an exam point of view, it's essential to look at the class dichotomy in the poem. Wordsworth represents the problems of the poor from the point of view of those who are not poor. The appropriation of the beggar for the benefit of those who give him alms amounts to an endorsement of the social hierarchy that produces abject poverty. Orestes A. Brownson puts it aptly in a Boston Quarterly Review article of April 1839, quote, "Wordsworth sings beggars, we admit, and shows very clearly that a man who begs is not to be despised, but does he ever fire our souls with a desire, so to perfect our social system, that beggary shall not be one of its fruits?" End quote. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any suggestions or doubts, please leave them in the comments section. I will surely get back to them. And don't forget to share this video with your batchmates. Thank you.